Good afternoon, this is Dan with Dan's Everything Outdoors, and today I want to come to you and show you what we ended up taking on that 115-mile section hike through the Shenandoah National Park. And the exact setup I had, some of the things I liked, some of the things I took out, and I thought that'd be helpful for you today. So, the first thing I'll start with what I was wearing. I started with, well, I wore these shoes. These are a pair of Keen hiking boots. They fit really well. They have a pretty decent toe box in them, and they worked well with one exception. Towards the end of the hike, this started lifting up on the heel. So I wasn't happy with that because I only had these for over a year, but I've only worn them in the last 4 months through my practice hikes and through my walking every day, and then on the actual hike itself. So I was kind of unhappy that the soles are coming off, but they did fit me well. I did have a couple blisters, but it's on a toe that I typically always get a blister on, and I was able to use moleskin for those. So that was the Keen hiking boots. I don't know what model that is. I wore Officio Briefs. I have one pair here and another pair, a second pair that's in the dry bag. They made these special shirts for us. You can see it's kind of faded out now for Frontier Mission Trek. And it has a map of the entire Shenandoah National Park, and I just wore the one shirt because they gave us 2 of them to have, and I wanted to keep the other one looking nice. So this was very nice because when it got wet every day from sweat or from rain, it dried out really quickly. Wicking socks here. I have one other additional pair I brought with me there in the dry bag as well. And I had 2 pair of Darn Tough socks. So these worked out really well, and what I did was a lot of days I just change them halfway through the day and then hang them on my pack so they could dry out. The last thing I wore was these quick drying hiking pants. I'm not sure exactly what brand those are, but I'll put a link to them where I got them from Amazon down below. You can check those out. And on the outside of my body I also wore this pack right here, and just like a Fanny Pack, and that's just so I could have certain things like well, this, but we won't show that to YouTube. I had extra battery. I'd carry my GoPro in here. I had this little slip cover that I could put over top of my GoPro that I'm filming with right now to protect just from scratches, and I kept my phone in here. Other items I kept in here were a comb. It's nice to make sure you have no ticks in your hair, and that you just can comb your hair every now and then. And then I had a toothpick in here, a floss toothpick that I always tend to eat after dinner. The other cool thing I brought with me is I took it out of here, but I had some emergency blanket, an emergency poncho, and a mirror, and Fresno lens. But those aren't in here right now. I ended up taking those out at the end of the hike. Along with, I have this in here, which was kind of I call it emergency / utility necklace I could wear that has several items on it. This one has a fire striker right here that you can use this in here to strike this to get a fire going. We ended up using that to get our stoves going. I have a USB rechargeable flashlight here that with lots of different settings. I have my nail clippers, which got used quite a bit by a lot of different people for trimming our toenails. My little pocket knife that I use quite a bit for opening up packages. A small compass, some fire starting material here. This is just Vaseline and cotton ball with a small striker in case I lose my other one, and that's just in a little chapstick container. And then a whistle with a compass here, and then paracord that has one of the inner strands is actually a fire starting material. So that's just something I use in my regular pack that I just threw in there to bring along with myself. I also have a lighter that I brought with me. We ended up using that. On the outside, I did have a hat that I wore. I didn't start out with this hat. This is a hat came in later. My wife ended up meeting us about a halfway mark on the trail, and I was able to drop some gear and swap some things out. This is a Zachary Fowler hat that I bought, and it just allowed my head to have a little bit of airflow behind it. Previously I had this hat on and it was just a little bit too hot for me, so it was nice to get the other hat. I did bring along some Crocs for when I got to camp, and I'm really glad I did because my feet were extremely sore. I don't know, I had something was wrong with the back of my heels. Not the Achilles tendon, but that bone that kind of rides up the back of my heel. It was excruciating pain. I don't know what that is. Heel spur, some people said. I'm not sure. Maybe you have an idea what that was, but it was very, very painful. After about the 5th mile, it really started hurting, and going downhill really caused it to get irritated. But it was nice to be able to get into some Crocs at night. It allowed my socks to dry out, and also when I got out of my hammock at night, I could end up just slipping these on and go to the bathroom. Although I slept in a hammock and I have an underquilt, I did bring half a pad. This is one of them long pads I just picked this up at Walmart. My son got one pad, I got the other pad. And this was my one luxury item, I think, because it just allowed me, whenever we stopped, I pulled it out really quickly. I could lay on the ground with it, I could sit on it. It was very nice on my feet at night when my feet were sore. It was a nice porch for my hammock, just to be able to set stuff down. Whenever I got to camp, whatever was laying on the ground, whether it was muddy or poison ivy, I could set things on top of this while I was setting up my hammock in my tarp. So I would, if I had to do it all over again, I may go a little bit smaller, but I think I just definitely bring this anyways. There was one night where we did have to sleep on the ground. This was during a shakedown hike, and this was able to be my ground mat to sleep on. So if I wouldn't have had this, I just would have been sleeping on the ground itself. Trekking poles, of course, I was using these. I wasn't sure if I needed trekking poles for a hike because I'd rather just use a walking stick. But I'm sure glad I did, because a lot of the hills going up and down, and especially down, they were able to help kind of brake me so I wasn't traveling too fast down the hill, and it took some of the pressure off my feet. So I'm glad I did use these. This is a Cascade brand I picked up off Amazon. I brought several different smart water bottles. I brought 1, 2, and there's one inside the pack, and then I have a small water bottle that I ended up putting on one of these fast clips on the front, and that was put on with this. And then I've got one of these Molly snaps that I was able to use to keep that in place. And the reason I went with this water bottle solution was I didn't know how much water I was going to need. There were days where we were concerned there wasn't going to be as much water, so I would fill up all 3 of these with water, and then this one I was able to use to mix Propel, and it's a hydration additive, so it gives your body the extra electrolytes. So I ended up bringing these with me, and I drink about 2 to 3 of these a day, and they tasted great. And I just mixed stuff in here. So this is my mixed bottle. These 2 are initially clean bottle. The 3rd bottle is inside was a clean bottle. I did end up getting rid of that about halfway through the hike because I found myself always filling it up, but then giving the water to somebody else. So finally I just gave the bottle to somebody else so they could fill it and carry it themselves. And this bottle here was meant to be, if it was marked with duct tape, that I could use if I needed duct tape, but it's marked that if any bottle I just filled up to get dirty and then drink through it with my Sawyer, then I could do so. This would always stay dirty, but I didn't have to do that this whole hike. This stayed a clean bottle, and I just always drank filtered water after it had been filtered through the Sawyer gravity system. In this zipper, I have the Sawyer water filter that I can put on top of this. Like I said, I never didn't need to. And I have a scoop to scoop water whenever the water was in a low enough condition that I wasn't able to dip my CNOC bag. This is a 3-liter bag. This was wonderful. into the water. So I would just dip this in the water, wouldn't stir up much dirt, and I could just pour it in there. This came in incredibly handy. This is just a water bottle that we cut the top off from, and everybody was borrowing this. They borrowed this quite a bit. We had people that were using pumps, but then sometimes when you dip something into the water or this, it just stir up the water too much and cause too much dirt in the bag. So we were trying to keep the bag as clean as possible and not clog up the filter, the Sawyer filter, and this came in handy. I even had other hikers that came by that we let them borrow this little cup just to get that little bit of water and then pour it into here. So this setup was just very simple. I can connect this to the bottom of this bag, and I didn't have all the extra tubes. I have the other tubes that you can run out to the ground, but I didn't end up using those. And then I bought this neat little adapter here that allows you to connect this to any of these water bottles. And to start out with, I would just either dip this whole thing in the water just like this, because this has a really wide mouth on it that opens up. Right here, you can just dip it in. Or I was able to just fill it up just like that. And then as I swapped bottles, a little bit would leak out the bottom here, but not much. But I found that better than trying to have a full bottle of water and then trying to screw all these onto the water bladder here and then put this on. It was just much easier just to start off with a water bottle from the beginning. And then I just had this rope here that I could tie, the piece of paracord, I could tie this to a tree, and it would allow me to filter 3 liters of water fairly efficiently, and it didn't take that much time to do that. And I can go off and do other tasks. So inside this pack, you also note that I got this big safety pin I put on the outside. That was for hanging up my socks. I could just, any piece of garment, I could just slide in there like that and then clip it on here, and it just allowed it to dry out. The only one thing I had inside this little side pocket was the kitchen sink. So if someone out there says, wow, he brought a lot of stuff on this hiking trip, well, I did. I brought the kitchen sink too. And this was wonderful. I initially bought this so I could possibly take bird baths when I really kind of wanted to be cleaned up before I go to bed, or for gathering any type of water, large quantity, like 5 liters of water. But I really found this to be incredibly helpful when I soaked my feet. When that pain got so bad, one of the AT thru hikers recommended, why don't you soak your feet in cold water? And I didn't want to go down to the water spot where people were, and sometimes that was quite a ways away from camp. So what I did was I just gather the water, or I'd take some of my water in my water bottle, pour it into here and soak my feet, and that really helped with the pain. So 15-20 minutes soaking it in the cold water, and I just laid on this pad here with my feet up on the backpack and would relax, and that helped out a lot. Matter of fact, one night on the trail I fell asleep, woke up, it's dark, everybody's already asleep, and my hammock's above me, and I basically had to then put my underquilt on and go to bed. I'd fell asleep on the ground underneath the hammock. I'll just show it to you real quick. It's by sea to summit, and it's basically just a 5-liter pouch for water. So it came in very handy. The pack is a Teton Fox 5200 Sports backpack, and it was bigger than I needed, but we also had to carry crew gear on this trip. So I didn't bring a stove with me, and I didn't bring any type of fluid for the stove, because we were carrying the crew's equipment. So we had lots of food for them because these were big meals. So I needed that extra space to carry all that extra weight. So I was right around 36 pounds total weight, which I didn't think was that bad, carrying all that extra food and equipment. The pack did work out well. I don't know if I'd use this on a second hike. I think I'd go with my smaller pack. But in here you'll see I've got the other bottle. This is the bottle that I actually had another one, I gave it away. I've got my Toaks titanium cup. This is all I brought with me. I did not bring the lid for it. I didn't bring, like I said, the stove or anything like that. It was just the cup, and that's all I really needed to be able to eat with, other than my spoon. My ditty bag. So in my ditty bag was just anything little that I didn't want to lose in this pack. I just wanted it in one place, and this was really easy because in here I was able to keep my Anchor phone charger. I put that in here with a cord. Here's the cord inside of here. I had this really lightweight wind filter for my GoPro, which I did not need. I have a little scrubby pad for cleaning out my Toaks cup. I have this lid that I can put on top of the spout here, on top of my Sawyer filter if I was drinking through here, or I could also put this on top of my water bottle and back flush my Sawyer filter. And most times I just once I filled this up, I'd give this a good squirt, pull this a few times, and it'd back flush the water out, and I just dump that water. So I really didn't even need to use this, to be honest with you. I got another little scrub pad. Only used this one time. Like we call them green weenies in the Navy. I had ibuprofen and Tylenol. I didn't use the ibuprofen that much because I didn't have any problem with joints or muscles or stiffness. I just used the Tylenol a lot because my feet hurt so bad at the end of the day. Had some little fire starting things. Did not end up using those. We ended up playing around with the striker and seeing if we could use raw resources materials to light our fire. I've got extra memory cards for the GoPro and a lens wipe. I've got the light for the GoPro. I only end up using that one time. And I got spare batteries for my headlamp. And I got some extra cordage, real small, lightweight extra cordage in case I needed it. And then some chapstick. And then I did one night use a piece of that cordage to tie onto my tarp, and that created a drip line that I then ran into my water bottles just like this, and was able to, when it was raining, fill up every one of my water bottles. I just set that coming down from my tarp line into the bottle, and it filled up all my bottles. And that's a morning I didn't have to wake up and then filter water. So that's everything that was in my ditty bag. Here's my tarp. This is a 12 foot by 10 foot, but it was bigger than what I needed. And I was gonna swap out to the new MIS tarp that I just did a review on recently because I thought that was smaller, but I forgot to pack it in my swap out box. So I just continued using this. It worked out fantastic, especially for the days of rain. And this is a really lightweight tarp. So not as lightweight as the MIS one, but it was not that much extra weight for what I was carrying. I had a rain poncho. This is a military. This is the Helicon military rain poncho. I really like this. I did decide to take this instead of a rain jacket. I didn't bring a rain jacket. I decided to go with a fleece jacket and a puffer jacket. But this was nice to be able to lay down on the ground. So you had something clean to put things on top of. This was nice when it started raining really hard. It covered my pack. It covered me. It kept me very dry. So I love these, and I've done some special things with this too to make it an underquilt. So a video coming up on that later, how I turn this into an underquilt. So I did not use it as underquilt with this trip, but I could have, and I probably should have because it would have cut some of my weight. Okay, let's talk about food. So this food was packed kind of down on the front side of this pack. My food bag. So this is my bear bag. I just kept everything that had smell to it in the bear bag. And I'll go through the food. So this was my toothpaste. I had a small piece of a bar of soap in here. I had some earplugs. I had some toothbrush, and I had Tums for those nights when you eat that really good macaroni cheese, but you need Tums to go to bed. That's what was in that bag, along with my bear bag rope, rock bag, and carabiner to be able to hang up and to do different bear hangs. I did a PCT style bear hang one night, and then I did some traditional bear hangs. And for food, we had food that was we were all carrying for the troop, but I had some sensitivities to some of those foods, so I had to bring some of my own. And just some of the things I brought in here, some of this is leftover, like the peanuts. I was giving these away because I wasn't eating the peanuts. But I brought some of my own granola bars. I brought some beef jerky, and I brought a lot of these tuna and chicken packs that were delicious. That way I was pretty much bringing my own food and carrying the troops' food, but I didn't eat as much of the troop food. I didn't eat the breakfast, I didn't eat a lot of the lunches, and I ate some of the suppers. So I had to bring my own food. That was probably the heaviest thing I had to bring with me, was this bag with food in it. And these are some things I resupplied after the hike. The one cool thing I did do was with my cereal. I took, this might be a good idea, I took cereal. This is granola cereal without any nuts in it. I added raisins, and I added a scoop of ISO 1000 protein powder to be the milk. So instead of milk, I had protein. And I tell you what, this was a fantastic breakfast. I'm glad that I came up with this idea. I hadn't ever heard anybody doing it, but it gave me a lot of fuel for my muscles during the early mornings. Side of the garbage bag here, I did have one of my jackets. This was my fleece jacket. This jacket was one that basically I wore to keep me warm in the morning or around camp. I didn't sleep in it though, but this one could be allowed to get wet if I wore it underneath my poncho. All right, the other jacket was my puffer jacket, and I wanted to keep that only with my sleeping equipment. So this was a jacket. I probably didn't need it, but I just wanted to be comfortable in the evenings and early morning. In my clothes bag, I had two neckerchiefs, and I originally brought these for handling hot pans and stuff like that. But what I ended up using them for is, one was wrapped on my forehead to soak up all the sweat coming off me so it wasn't dripping off my body. And then the other one was on my neck, and I would just keep swapping them. I'd take the wet one, which then would put on my neck to cool myself down, but then the drier one that had dried on the back of my neck to put around my forehead, and then that would soak up sweat for me. So this is a pair of sleeping underwear, just a pair of cotton underwear. And my second pair of ex officio hiking briefs. My wash rag for taking a bird bath. I have a dirty clothes bag here, and I had a long sleeve shirt. I thought I would need this, but the only time I was thinking I'd use it during the daytime to keep the sun off me, but I really didn't have a challenge with sun because we're hiking, mainly under the canopy of trees. But I did use this one night to keep myself warm while I was sleeping, but not too warm as the puffer jacket would do. So I think I would bring this again. I also had a second pair of my Darn Tough socks. I brought a pair of sleeping socks that I only wore once while sleeping. Other times I just wore them in walking around camp. So these are kind of a comfortable set of cotton socks that were nice to have at the end of the day. I kept a sleeping shirt, just a cotton shirt. You've never seen me wear a shirt like this before. Last but not least, I had a pair of long underwear in case it got cold, and I really only wore these one night just because I was too hot in them. This is my puffer jacket, acted as my pillow many nights as well when I wasn't wearing it, but I did have a few nights that I did need to wear this puffer jacket, and I wanted to keep it dry at all times. It hardly weighed anything, and it was nice to have. So if I were to have one jacket or the other, I think I would bring along this puffer jacket and then get rid of some other warm items for sleeping, but I'd hold on to this. I also had, this is my under quilt that I brought. This is the One Tigress under quilt. It's a little bit big, it's a little bit bulky. Not so heavy, but I really wanted to stay warm. And I think I could have done without this if I used my poncho as an under quilt. Or I could have done without these if I use this all the time with my quilt. So this is the quilt I brought. This is actually something I got later. I was swapped out from my sleeping bag that was too warm. Again, I didn't know what to expect on the trail, how cold it was going to get. It said it was getting down to the low 50s, so I wanted to stay warm. And so I probably was, if there's anything I could change, I could be a little lighter on how warm I was at night. But I did, there was a couple nights I'm very glad I did have it. My bag, of course, that I kept put stuff in to keep dry, and my hammock, just a basic hammock, no bug net or anything like that on that. So talking about these warm things, the first thing I did swap out when I had a chance was I got rid of my really warm down sleeping bag. I think this goes down to 20 degree sleeping bag. I just didn't need it any longer. The first night I was out, it was very comfortable to have it. I enjoyed it, but I didn't need it after that. I just found myself to be too hot. So I swapped it for something that's 1/3 the weight and 1/3 the size. So that was one thing I got rid of. One thing I could have gotten rid of would have been this, but I didn't want to take the chance, and I forgot to put my Swagman roll in the swap out box. So I think I could have swapped to the Swagman roll. It's it's a little bit lighter and it compresses down a little bit more than this does. And it has multiple purposes where I could have gotten rid of this jacket right here. Wouldn't have needed the jacket if I had the Swagman roll. Other things I got rid of. I had this little tripod. I had never used it. Ended up dropping that and getting rid of that. I had sunglasses that I never needed on the trail, so I got rid of that. I got rid of my bug spray. I had sprayed my clothing with Sawyer bug spray before I left, and I really never had a problem with any mosquitoes or ticks. So I ended up getting rid of this. I ended up getting rid of my sunscreen. I got rid of the Afterbite. I never needed to use that. And I got rid of my tenacious tape is what it's called. Got rid of these gloves, which I did not need at all. Sleeping shorts. I just slept in my underwear. So that's all I really ended up getting rid of. There's probably a couple things I could have, if I did it over again, I probably could do a new combination of things and lose just a little bit of weight there. The very last thing is, let's go up here to the brain and talk about what I had with me. I did have a headlamp with the batteries you saw earlier to swap out for. I had a bug net just in case I did come into contact with bugs. I could put the long sleeve shirt on and put the bug net on to on my face to keep the mosquitoes off me. I just kept this in here to kind of keep it clean. Just a regular spoon fork combination. Little medical kit that I use quite a bit. I had antibacterial ointment in here. Smart Tab moleskin. These were fantastic, very sticky, stayed on my feet. I could cut them different sizes. And then I also have brought on KT tape strips for any spots that are starting to get hot spots, but before they had blisters on them. Do a couple wet wipes in there, some Band-Aids, some Q-tips, some dental floss, and a magnifying glass and mirror. Backpack does have a built-in rain cover, which I did use a couple times on the trail. My toiletry kit here, which had my the deuce for digging cat holes. I ended up putting in hand sanitizer. I had toilet paper, which I use most of. I had a bag in here that I put the dirty toilet paper in, and I had some baby wet wipes that I had dried out. So whenever I went to the bathroom, I just add a little bit of water to one of the things so I could kind of freshen up everything at the same time. and that really worked out well. If I do it over, I think I would not need to bring this large of an underquilt. I could have used my poncho, even though it would have created a little condensation moisture underneath, or I could have gone with my Swagman roll, which would still be pretty warm, but not as warm as this was, and it would be lighter. And in that case, I could get rid of these long underwear, because I only wore them once. I don't like tight things on my body when I'm sleeping anyways. I like loose things. And I think that would have given me, I could have saved another pound total of all the weight. But everything else I pretty much used and needed and wanted. Now if I was to do the hike again tomorrow, I would do, with the exception is I would drop this down to the next size down, Tarp. And I also mentioned that, you know, since I'm not a through hiker, I wasn't spending money on the most expensive equipment. So obviously if I did this, I could spend a lot of money on some ultralight gear, but I was going with number one, things I had and things I was willing to spend the money on right now to go on the hike with, and be light enough that I was comfortable, but not spend all the money for the super light equipment. So all in all, I think my dry weight was right around 22 pounds, which I didn't think was bad. It's when I added the food and the water and some of the other items, I got up to 36 and sometimes 38 pounds, depending on the amount of food we were carrying for the team. So I hope that's helpful to you. Please like and subscribe if you like this kind of material. I pretty much don't do a lot of hiking videos, but I do a lot of outdoor activities. If I'm hiking, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do a video on. And you be sure to at least like it. If you want more of this, do subscribe, and you'll get notifications of when I post new material. So I appreciate you watching, and thank you for your time, and hopefully this was helpful to you. Have a great day.